The Great Wall of China, one of the biggest wonders of the world, no? They say this this side is, see, where they throw the arrows to the enemies, and that's why they built this giant wall, to protect China from their enemies. But you know what's interesting and very curious? This side is outside China. This side, no, I mean, this side is China, and this side is outside China. Meaning, this wall, the history is a lie. This wall was not built to protect China from these enemies. It's the enemies which are in this side are protecting themselves from China. So, the Chinese did not build this wall. Who built this wall? I'll tell you, research the Tartarian Empire, yeah, which was in all this area, and they were defending themselves from the Chinese, not the other way around. History is a lie, geography is a lie, science is a lie. They lied to us.
2,000 years ago, you have the Great Wall of China. It's 13,000 miles long.
Jesus helped build
Here
that.
we're really talking about, you're right, you're right.
Yeah.
But here you're really talking about 1,000 miles. You're talking about 1,000 miles.
Jesus helped build
Here we're
that.
really talking about, you're right, you're right.
Yeah.
But here you're really talking about 1,000 miles. No matter where we go, it seems that the response, it just gets better and better. And the polls have been phenomenal.
You see Zogby?
Zogby was great.
33% that came out today, right? Zogby, 33%. Incredible. I'm not surprised at all. I'll tell you why.
Zogby was great.
33% that came out today, right? Zogby, 33%. Incredible.
33% that came out today, right? Zogby, 33%. Incredible.
Because...
I'm liking him a lot.
No, I'm not. I'm liking you too. I'm liking you too.
Welcome back to the channel. This is BTE TV and I am Tony Jackson. Today, we embark on a journey that challenges one of the most entrenched historical narratives of all time, the story of the Great Wall of China. For centuries, we've been told a false version of events: when it was built, who built it, and why it was built, and what purpose did it serve. But what if that official account is not the truth, but actually a carefully constructed facade? What if the Great Wall is not merely a defensive barrier, but something far more profound, a structure whose real purpose has been obscured by layers of disinformation and indoctrination? Stretching over 13,000 miles, this magnificent and mysterious construction is more than stone and mortar. It is a pathway, a symbol, and perhaps even a key to understanding a forgotten chapter of human history. Some ancient accounts point toward a land once known as Terra De Iesso, otherwise known as the Land of Jesus. Could this massive walkway have been designed as a bridge for believers, guiding them toward the legendary camp of the saints? In this presentation, we will peel back the layers of accepted history, examine the evidence, and confront the possibility that the Great Wall's true origins and purpose have been deliberately hidden. Together, we will explore whether this wonder of the world is not just a monument, of a great empire, but rather a sacred road that connects us to a deeper concealed truth. And before we begin, once again, this is all just for entertainment purposes. We're just theorizing, saying crazy things that don't make any sense, because we have nothing better to do during Satan's little season than waste our time talking about nonsense. Now, having said that, let's begin. Before we get into the first segment, I just want to thank the subscriber that pointed out the video of Trump and Stephen Colbert talking about the Great Wall being built by Jesus. Honestly, I had never heard that before, and thank you for leading me to that discovery. When I found the video, I was absolutely blown away, because I know Trump says a lot of things that at first it sounds like he's joking, but really he's being very serious. So thank you to that subscriber. You know who you are. And that's actually what led me to wanting to look further into the Great Wall. I'm not saying that I believe Jesus built the Great Wall, but I do personally believe that it had something to do with the millennial reign. I believe it was built during the millennial reign. We're going to get to that. In the first segment, though, I wanted to show a video by a YouTube channel called Bright Insight. I don't agree with everything he says, but he does know someone. He is friends with someone that actually went to the wall, examined it. So I just want you to get a general overview of kind of the basics of this, conspiracy theory. First of all, how there's so many holes, much like the real wall. There's so many holes in the story. It can't possibly be built when they said, which they're saying was built in like 4th century BC. And there's just so much evidence, and we'll get to that later. But just watch this first clip. Again, I don't agree with some of his theories. They're just speculating that they still think it was some type of defensive wall or something. But you'll know what I'm talking about later. I don't agree with that. But let's hear from what someone who was there, who actually was at the wall, who climbed it. Let's hear their take on this, and then I'll take you down my rabbit hole. I found out some things that a little bit different of a spin on this. Okay, let's get into this, and I will comment on it after. Here we go.
But not only that, some sections still remain hidden or buried, with estimates suggesting that up to 30% of the wall remains undiscovered. But here is something that a lot of people find surprising as well, is that a vast majority of the pictures that you'll find on the internet involving the Great Wall of China are all at the notable tourist locations, all of which have been restored. It's not until you go off the beaten path that you realize that a vast majority of the Great Wall of China is in ruins, shattered, and slowly decaying. And I want to give a big shout out to my buddy Michael Collins of the Wandering Wolf YouTube channel, who visited China personally, that's him, just a few years ago and explored the areas off the beaten path. In fact, he entered the Great Wall of China 4 miles from the entrance. And keep in mind, there are numerous entrances. But it's once you get off the beaten path that you see how unbelievable this structure is and the level of decay that it has. Now, keep in mind the wall's average height is 20 to 30 feet, or 6 to 9 meters, and the wall's width varies between 15 to 30 feet, or 4.5 to 9 meters. And over 10 million people visit the wall annually. However, a vast majority of it is hardly ever visited at all. But as you look through these photos, I'm going to share as many of them as I can. One of the most astonishing things, other than the length of this wall, is the extent that they went to construct it over various steep hills and mountains. This wall is an unbelievable feat of human ingenuity and engineering, and it cannot be overstated just how impressive this is. I mean, we all grew up learning about the Great Wall of China, but I feel like through my studies on the topic of ancient history, it's seemingly been forgotten. I haven't seen a lot of people talking about it. It's been totally off my radar. And it wasn't until I had a live stream with Michael Collins that he informed me of the various conspiracies involving it. And it involves 2 things. One of which is the fact that he literally was able to scale over this wall from the outside going in. I'll say that again, and keep in mind we don't have images of it because he wasn't aware of what was happening while he was there. It wasn't until after the fact that it came to his awareness of just how astonishing this fact is, which is that you can climb over various parts of the Great Wall of China from the outside going in, which makes absolutely no sense on earth if this wall was constructed to keep people out, as of course we were all taught in school. But not only that, the various arrow slits that are found throughout the wall are also found facing the inside rather than the outside. And many areas of the wall have the arrow slits facing both ways, which they say was to help with the defenses. However, what Mike witnessed firsthand was that there was vast portions of the wall that where the arrow slits were only facing the inside, not the outside. Which, in other words, is indicative that the wall may have been constructed to keep their people inside, unable to leave, rather than keeping outsiders from coming in, which to me is one of the most disturbing things I've heard. If that is indeed the case, which again, guys, think about this for a second. If you're able to easily climb over the wall from the outside in, whereas on the inside going out it's noticeably steep, maybe we should consider the possibility that this wall was constructed for much more sinister reasons than we had imagined. Now, this, of course, will be highly debated. I'm not saying it's a total fact, but what I am sharing is that people who have gone to this site, who I trust, have visited it on the complete remote regions of it, witnessed firsthand that they were easily able to climb over the wall from the outside going in. Think about that. And the very fact that there's arrow slits facing the inside rather than the outside, I mean, come on. So this is something that I have to go and visit myself because I cannot begin to tell you how difficult it is to find information involving the remote areas of the Great Wall of China. Try it for yourself. Try Googling this topic and see how difficult it even is to find pictures of the remote areas of the Great Wall. Yes, you'll find some photos, as I did too. But when we're talking about a structure that's over 13,000 miles long and has so few photos available, at least in that regard, and again, most all of the photos are from the notable tourist locations which have been restored. You see, it's the more that I study the topic of ancient history that I learn that there are so many details involving various structures around the world that just don't add up to the things that we were taught in school. You've all heard me talk about the Great Pyramids of Giza, which of course, no pyramids in Egypt had any mummies found in them whatsoever. And none of the tombs have hieroglyphs and petroglyphs that you find in the Valley of the Kings and elsewhere. And you've of course already heard me talk in ad nauseum about the various excavation issues surrounding Göbekli Tepe, which is of course the world's oldest and most mysterious ancient site. And for whatever reason, excavations, large-scale excavations, have essentially been deferred for future generations with an estimate of 150 years before it'll be fully excavated, which makes absolutely no logical sense. I'm not going to go down that path in this video because I've been talking about it extensively, but it's something, like I said, I want to mention in every video to keep people aware of the vast issues involving the archaeological situation today. But with that being said, I encourage everybody here to do some of their own research on the Great Wall of China, and I'm hoping that this video will encourage other people to visit the country and the wall itself, as I plan to do so. I want to be able to see firsthand and take photos because, again, it wasn't until I talked to Michael Collins that I became aware of these details. And he wasn't expecting to see what he was going to see until after he was there. He didn't understand going into it that he was going to find areas of the wall that he could climb over from the outside in. He wasn't aware that he was going to see tremendous amounts of arrow slits that were only facing inwards. So it's examples like this that people like us, just normal people that are enthusiasts for lost ancient history, that can take it upon themselves to travel off the beaten path to various ancient sites around the world, that we can do our own research because Lord knows we can't rely on the archaeological community or the academic community to do so any longer. These people might mean well, but they're taught certain information in schools, and if they want to get employment as an archaeologist, you have to go down certain paths. You're not just free to go exploring things on your own. It's just not how it works these days, which is incredibly disappointing and sad. Again, take a moment to look at more photos. I have more photos than I can possibly share, but I want you to appreciate just the incredible marvel of engineering that this site is, and then consider to yourself the possibility that this wall, which is very mysterious, there's so much that we do not know about the Great Wall of China. I'm not saying we know nothing about it. I'm not saying it's a complete mystery. I have to point that out because people will, take me out of context. But when we're talking about a structure that's 13,000 miles long and there's so little of it that the public ever visits, people need to take it upon themselves to do the research.
Okay, so they're on the right track, but the arrow slits, I have no idea. I don't know if that was part of the original structure. They could have been added later, and for what purpose, I have no idea. It's actually, don't get me wrong, this Great Wall is still a major mystery. I think I'm just scratching the surface, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to just strip away everything we've been told about it and just look at it at its face value. Just literally just look at it. Go online and look at pictures of the Great Wall. Look at videos like that video I had at the beginning. The two people went hiking there. It's incredible. It's one of the most amazing structures I've ever seen, and I don't think it was built by humans. It was literally built on the tops of mountains. And they said it took hundreds of thousands, or if not millions, of people over, centuries to build it. Come on, that's so unrealistic. It's like the Great Pyramids. They just don't know. And I don't believe it was built by human hands. So anyway, I hope that gave you, though, a good overview. And thank you to Bright Insight. Great video, great research, and your friend. Hats off to him for actually going there. I wish I could go there myself. All right, let's get into the next segment. We're going to get a little bit deeper into this rabbit hole, and I think you're going to find this very interesting. Okay, here we go.
This is the Great Wall of China. But is it really the Great Wall of China? Now, just to put it into perspective for you, they say this wall, which is 13,000 miles long, which, to put it in comparison, the length of the U.S. from east to west is about 2,800 miles. So that means you can travel the length of the U.S. east to west coast 5 times about, in comparison to the miles that this massive wall from the 7th century BC spans. Now, why build a wall like this? Well, they say it was for the roaming barbarians, the Tartars. So they spent the next several hundred years constructing this wall for those roaming barbarians, only to put the battlements on the wrong side. Those are those top little notches on castle walls. Yeah, those are actually facing towards China. Also, why would China build a wall with entrances on the opposite side in Mongol Russia? That's because the wall was never made for the Chinese. It was always the Great Wall of Tartaria. And just look at this older map here. You can see that wall perfectly blocking off Tartaria from what is now China right here. And in many historical documents, it was even referred to as the Great Wall of Tartary. And pause to read the rest of this if you want. We are the inheritors, the reclaimed ruins of the old world. Okay,
now we're going to go a little bit deeper into the connection to Tartaria. And I found this great video called Great Wall of Tartaria, Who is Telling the Truth? And for some reason, it wouldn't let me drag and drop it into my video editing software. So I'm actually just going to play it. This discusses several key figures in our history. Marco Polo, who in the 12th century traveled to Asia and did not report seeing any wall. Therefore, it could not have been built as early as they say. Also, Anatoly Fomenko, and if you're not familiar with Anatoly Fomenko, highly suggest you research him. He is basically the father of the rewritten history truth movement that we all subscribe to. He basically disproved many of the official narratives. He was a very brilliant historian, researcher, and you can buy he has a collection of works called history, fiction or science, I think it's called. Anyway, they're going to get into Anatoly Fomenko's writings on this subject as well. So I'm going to play it and then I'll comment in between. Okay, here we go.
Of the Great Wall, and not the Chinese. The official narrative claims the wall was built to stop the barbarous Mongol invaders, but theorists say that China has taken credit for the vast construct originally designed to keep them out. They point to images of the wall which appear to show arrow slits and battlements pointing towards China. There are also other depictions which would appear to show the openings on the north side facing Tartary. Could this be evidence that the Great Wall was in fact built by the Tartarians and not the Chinese? Well, I wanted to find out more. So, I started to search for the first person to make this claim. A quick perusal of the Internet Archive shows the theory became popular on TikTok in the past few years, and although many YouTubers have shied away from discussing the topic directly, there have been a few. I managed to track the theory down in a book called One World Tartarians, which was released in 2022, where it becomes clear that the origins of this conspiracy lay in the hands of Russian mathematician Anatoly Fomenko. If you aren't familiar with Fomenko's work, he's a professor at Moscow State University who further developed and expanded upon theories put forward by Soviet writer Nikolai Morozov. Essentially, Fomenko claimed he found discrepancies in chronological dating, which meant that everything recorded as happening before 1100 AD had been fabricated by Jesuits in the 16 to 1700s. He also claims the Tartarian or Mongolian Empire was actually the Great Russian Empire, which controlled the world until Russia was taken over by the European Romanovs. At this point, history was falsified to remove mentions of this Great Russian Empire. However, critics within the Tartaria community suggest Fomenko has ulterior motives, with his theory being incredibly Rus-centric and promoting Russian nationalism. The idea of Russia being the Mongols removes their centuries of subjugation to the Tartar yoke. It also removes a long-standing history of Russian aggressions against the indigenous people, and rewrites a story of invasion and poverty into one of unity and prosperity. So, we will now examine Fomenko's specific claims about the Great Wall. In Volume 5 of his New Chronology, he quotes Morozov as saying, "The idea that the building of the famous Chinese wall with a height of 6 to 7 meters and a thickness of 3, stretching for 3,000 kilometers, began in 246 BC and was only finished after 1,866 years by 1620 AD is ridiculous." He's saying the idea of starting a defensive structure which will not be completed for 2,000 years is nonsensical. Fomenko further explains the wall is too thick for defending against arrows and spears, with the thickness suggesting it was built to defend against cannons. This would place its construction in the 15th to 16th century.
All right, so right there takes us back to the beginning of this video when Stephen Colbert said, "Oh yeah, Jesus built the Great Wall 2,000 years ago," and Trump said, "Yeah, you're right." They're both in the same club, and I think that was their way of, almost like mocking us for believing the story that this wall took 2,000 years to build, and the whole official story. So I thought that was interesting, that you can see now that there is proof that it was not built when they said. Looks like it was built much later. I'm getting that 1600s, but personally, I think this was built during the millennial reign.
This was further backed up by the seeming lack of mentions of the wall before this period. For example, Marco Polo never reported seeing such a structure when he traveled to China between 1271 and 1295 AD. Professor Fomenko also notes how some people, such as Arab historian Abul Fida, seemingly describe the wall as the Wall of Gog and Magog. Fomenko then quotes Russian historian Lev Gumilev as saying, "The wall stretches for 4,000 kilometers. Its height reached 10 meters, with watchtowers every 60 to 100 meters. But when the works were finished, as it turned out, that all the armed forces of China were not sufficient to organize effective defense on the wall. If you put a small detachment on each tower, it will be destroyed before the neighbors give help." Fomenko highlights this fact and asks why the Chinese did not think about this before building the wall.
So if those weren't watchtowers for defensive purposes, I wonder if they were stations where maybe the saints were there, or to give guidance, or I don't know, to bless the pilgrims as they made their way to the camp of saints. I don't know, but the more I hear these people try to make sense of this wall, I don't think we can rule stuff like that out, because the official story, even the theories that these guys are coming up with, don't really make sense. And they can't really explain what these watchtowers were for, actually. Who knows? Maybe it's where, maybe angels were stationed on there. I don't know. We just don't know. All right, let's continue. I want to get to something. And did you find it interesting that it's been called the Wall of Gog and Magog? I thought that was interesting as well. All right, now I'm going to read an excerpt from Anatoly Fomenko's book, History, Science, or Fiction. And this chapter is titled, When and Why the Great Wall of China Was Built. And I'm just going to read it. It says, today it is thought that construction started on the Great Wall of China in the 3rd century BC for the purpose of defense against the northern nomads. We would like to suggest the following idea. The Great Wall of China was most likely built as a construction defining the border between two countries, not as a defensive wall. And these two countries are China and Russia. It could have certainly been intended as a military fortification, but it is hardly true that the wall was used in that particular capacity. It is pointless to defend a 4,000-kilometer wall from the attack of an enemy, even if it stretches over just 1,000 or 2,000 kilometers. The wall in its present form falls short of 4,000 kilometers. The wall was built, first of all, to mark the border between two countries, notably when they came to an agreement about the border, presumably to eliminate any boundary disputes in the future, and such disputes most likely did occur. The northern border of China follows approximately the 40th parallel. The Wall of China precisely follows this border. Moreover, on the map, the wall is marked with a thick line and signed Muraille de la Chine, i.e. the Tall Wall of China, translated from French. It all means that the Great Wall of China was built in, and it says, I believe this says, 16th to the 17th century, as the political boundary between China and Russia, which Russia equals, or China and Russia equal Mongol Tartary. Some may object. On the contrary, the border between Russia and China in the 17th century was drawn along the ancient wall. However, in this case, the wall should have been referred to in the written Russian-Chinese agreement. We haven't found such references. So when was the wall/border constructed? It appears as precisely in the 17th century. It is for a reason considered that its construction completed only in 1620, and it might even be later. Did the wall exist earlier than the 17th century? Most likely not. The historians tell us that China was conquered by the Mongols in 1279. It became a part of the Great Empire. According to the new chronology, this took place in the, I guess that's the 14th century. In the Scaligean chronology of China, this event was marked in the 14th century as the Ming Dynasty. So interesting, right? So this totally just, knocks down the official story and the timeline of when the Great Wall was built. All right, let's continue because there's a lot more and it gets even more interesting. All right, now we're going to go further into the connection between the wall and Tartaria and the Camp of the Saints. And I'm going to play a video by a channel called Chapter 20, and I will discuss afterwards. Okay, here we go.
Okay, so who is Gog and Magog? The Wikipedia article summarizes it as a pair of names that appear in the Bible and the Quran and are attributed to different people, tribes, or countries. So it is not clear what they are. Part of the confusion stems from the fact that Gog and Magog probably originated from Gog from Magog. So Magog describes a place, but over time it became two people. In addition to the Book of Revelation, Gog and Magog are also mentioned in the book of Ezekiel. In this prophecy, Gog and Magog are described as leaders of hordes that will threaten the restored Israel, but would be destroyed by God. The theme that Gog and Magog were a barbarian people, or at least their kings, runs through various sources and interpretations. Among the most popular are the Scythians, the Huns, the Turks, the Khazaran, the Mongols, and the Tartars. In other words, mainly nomadic peoples of the Eurasian continent. I find it particularly interesting how in many stories Gog and Magog are trapped behind a wall or in a mountain. For example, 2 chapters of the Quran describe how the Yajuj and Majuj, Gog and Magog, were suppressed by Du al-Qarnayn, which means the two-horned one. Dul-Qarnayn, having journeyed to the ends of the world, meets a people who barely understood a word who seek his help in building a barrier that will separate them from the people of Yajuj and Majuj who do great mischief on earth. He agrees to build it for them, but warns that when the time comes, referring to the last age, God will remove the barrier. The Alexander romance of Pseudo-Callisthenes describes gates constructed by Alexander the Great between 2 mountains called the Breasts of the North. The mountains are initially 18 feet apart and the pass is rather wide, but Alexander's prayers to God causes the mountains to draw nearer, thus narrowing the pass. There he builds the Caspian gates out of bronze, coating them with fast-sticking oil. The gates enclose 22 nations and their monarchs, including Gog and Magog, therein called Goth and Magoth. The geographic location of these mountains is rather vague, described as a 50-day march away northwards after Alexander put to flight his Belserian enemies. The Alexander romance is a fascinating piece of writing, and is considered the most successful bestseller of antiquity. It has been translated and expanded into dozens of languages. It describes a journey around the world by Alexander the Great, the content of which sounds so fantastic that today's historians dismiss it as pure fiction. It even describes something like a submarine, centuries before they got invented. He travels towards the North Star to the land of the blessed to find the fountain of life, a mythological water that is said to bestow immortality when consumed. In my opinion, this is only the plasma at North Pole in the camp of the saints. To reach the land of the blessed, he has to cross the land of eternal darkness, which sounds even more like the polar night. But I digress. What's the deal with the wall that imprisons Gog and Magog? Could Gog and Magog be referring to the Nephilim giants of the past? Perhaps the wall is the Great Wall of China. Could this excessively high wall have been built to keep monsters or giants out of the area known as Tartaria? Possibly, at least this concept is shown to us time and time again in pop culture. The live-action movie, as bad as it was, did a good job of portraying the horror that was the Nephilim giants. Notice the Joker-like grin. But what if this wall is just symbolic of a wall that separates dimensions, and when this wall is torn down at the end of time, the Nephilim spirits trapped in this dimension can re-enter our world? And these disembodied spirits possess large parts of humanity, and go to war against the camp of the saints in a number of billions, just like sand on the sea. The scenario just described is basically the zombie apocalypse. Think about it: black eyes, violent, a strange way of moving, as if the body is controlled by something that is no longer used to a physical body. The typical pop culture image of a zombie is remarkably similar to that of the demon-possessed. Of the hundreds of zombie films in which this concept has been pushed in recent years, one in particular has caught my eye. In the movie World War Z, a pathogen spreads that turns people into bloodthirsty zombies in a matter of seconds. At the end of the movie, the rest of the surviving humanity entrenches itself behind high walls in the city of Jerusalem. In my opinion, this is symbolic of the encirclement of the camp of the saints in the New Jerusalem by the Gog and Magog, who attack here in numbers like sand on the sea. In the movie, the final battle takes place in Jerusalem. But the occult symbolism of the cover makes it clear that this is about the final battle at the black plasma volcano Rupes Nigra, where the camp of the saints is located.
You weren't expecting to see that, were you? Now, if you made it this far in the video, you're lucky because you just saw a hidden Easter egg about Satan's little season ending in 2026. Possibly that may be the final battle, the war of Gog and Magog, where they surround the camp of saints. Let me know what you think about that in the comments. I thought that was very interesting. I kind of hid that in the back here to, give a little treat for those who actually stuck around through this boring video. But I thought that was pretty interesting. That channel, again, is called Chapter 20. So I definitely recommend his work. He's pretty, he's got a lot of great content. All right, and finally, let's continue because we're getting closer. I feel like we're getting closer to, we're creating a picture, right, of the possibilities of what this wall could be. And again, I'm not trying to connect dots that aren't there. It's just I'm being led in this direction. I do believe it's all connected. If it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, and again, the same as the buildings that we see, and no matter how you try to, cut it, it ends up just being like there's only one explanation. Why would they go through so much trouble to lie about who built this wall? Can somebody tell me that? Who would go through this much trouble unless the cover-up was so incredibly important? In other words, they had to make sure nobody could, even as deep as we could dig, could find proof to prove to the world that Jesus came back. And I think that's why they've covered this up. I do. And again, I could be wrong, but that's what my heart and soul is telling me. All right, let's continue.
They are hiding this from you. Did you know that the Great Wall of China is 13,171 miles long? And why has it always been downplayed throughout history? To put that in perspective, from the east to the west coast of America, it is on average 3,000 miles. You have to times that by 4 and add 1,000, and you're still not at that number. It leaves you to wonder, how did they build such a wall, and why? Did you even know that China was that big? They started to build the Great Wall of China in 220 BC, before Jesus had even walked the earth. No sane ruler or country would dedicate that many resources and power to build something with no purpose, especially if they knew it would take over 1,000 years to build the finished wall. Who were they defending against that they needed all 13,000 miles to even fathom winning? What or who were they so scared of? The theory is that the wall was built by the Tartarian Empire. If you look at old maps and photos, you would see that the steep side of the Great Wall and the lookout post is actually facing China. Normally, those sides be used to prevent any invaders from climbing up or to pick off enemies with crossbows. The fact that it faces China implies it was built by someone else, the Tartarians, to keep whatever was in China in, rather than defend what was in China. Follow to learn more.
Okay, continuing on, during my research, I stumbled across this website called stolenhistory.net. I highly suggest you check this out. There's lots of great information on Terra De Iesso and Tartaria and, old maps and things like that. And I found this section on the Great Wall of China, and I'll try to sum this up as best as I can. It appears that, if you can see here, the Great Wall of China ends up at the coast, which is right above what is now called North Korea, but it's actually a place called Kinsay. And I'm going to show you some information on Kinsay, a mythical city. Okay, they say mythical city, of course, but there had been many things written about Kinsay, from all the way from Marco Polo. And this says that Kinsay had 12,000 bridges and was 100 miles across. Okay, and Marco Polo wrote that he passed by the city of Kinsay, and it says, which contained 80 million of souls. And Nicolas de Conte, passing not many years after by the same way, found the city wholly destroyed, and had begun to be newly built after another form. So, no less stately, but perhaps better fortified, was the city of Babylon, and that which was the imperial city of the world became a desert, a habitation of harpies, satyrs, and monsters, and the walls, which were 200 feet in height and 50 in breadth, could not defend it from time. So there's some really interesting stuff on this website. I'm not going to, delve too much into that now, but I just wanted to point out that there is more evidence that shows that the Great Wall was a path to these heavenly cities, Kinsay being one. And it looks like you get to Kinsay, and maybe that was somehow a pit stop on the way to the Camp of Saints. I don't know, but this city sounds pretty miraculous and amazing. And there's a picture of it right here. Okay, that's an old illustration of Kinsay. I think there's another one here. Yeah. Look at this. This is incredible. Anyway, so I just wanted to mention there's a lot. Look, if you really dig, you're going to find that there's all these old cities that they say was mythical, but I don't think it was mythical. There's maps of it. There's drawings of it. And if you look this up online, this is what it says. The legendary city of Kinsay, also known as Hangzhou, was a marvel of ancient Chinese architecture and culture. Marco Polo, who visited the city in the 13th century, described it as the city of heaven and praised its beauty, including its 12,000 bridges and numerous canals. The city was a significant port and a hub of commerce during the Yuan dynasty, known for its wealth and cultural richness. Kinsay's legacy continues to inspire visitors and historians alike, as it remains a symbol of the grandeur and complexity of Chinese civilization. What I was reading on that website was this is not the same Kinsay as what was written about by Marco Polo. But again, I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole. That's a whole nother issue. But anyway, I just thought this was important and relevant to this video. Okay. So anyway, that's really what I wanted to say about that. I think that's important to completing this picture that we have of the wall being some kind of a path to the Camp of the Saints. Okay, so now we are nearing the end of this presentation, and I just want to say that I am sure I'm going to be seeing a lot of comments on this, and I'm looking forward to hearing the information that you guys have. I encourage everyone to read the comments under my videos. I've seen some of the most amazing stories and truthful information shared in the comments under my videos, especially these videos on the millennial reign. So I really encourage you guys to go read all those comments. And I feel like together we can actually get to the bottom of what this so-called wall really is. And I'm sure that we will. in my heart and in my soul, I am being led in the direction that it does have something to do with the millennial reign. I know that because just look at the facts. It was built during the millennial reign, and therefore I know Jesus had something to do with it. Then we have Trump and Stephen Colbert joking, but were they really joking? Stephen Colbert said, oh yeah, Jesus helped build that wall 2,000 years ago. And Trump said, oh yeah, you're right. Now, the 2,000 years ago, that was maybe them mocking us. Like, oh yeah, these people actually believe this wall took 2,000 years to build. But maybe they were being truthful about Jesus helping to build it. I honestly do feel in my heart and in my soul, this was somehow connected to Terra De Iesso, the land of Jesus, the camp of the saints. I think this wall was a path for pilgrims to find their way there. Maybe it was some type of a portal. I don't know, but I do believe that. Again, you guys are going to help me solve this mystery. Once we read all the comments, hopefully we'll get even more information. I also have a friend who's reaching out to some other content creators, asking them for their information on this. I know there's a couple that come to mind. Madeline from Leaving Babylon did a video on this. I just don't know which video it's in. I'm going to reach out to her. Guy Anderson is another one who's I've communicated with him before. So I'm going to maybe make an update to this if I get any more information. But again, really, we're just kind of have to use our own God-given discernment, because there's nothing in writing that's like, this is proof of what the wall is. So we're just looking at all the physical evidence and drawing our own conclusions. Again, I want to thank you guys all. You guys have been amazing. I appreciate your support. And for the people that hate the music, you can turn off the video now, because there's going to be a music video following this. Thank you all. God bless you all, and good night.